Okay, everyone, let's call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is to have a round of introductions. So, Cal, may I ask you to start?
I'm Cal Todd.
He's Cal Toth.
I'm Liz Paris, resident.
Sherry Salomon.
Michael Mahaffey.
Eric Simon.
And as Eric just pointed out, we don't have a quorum tonight, but we'll continue the meeting. The only thing we can't do is actually vote on anything. I don't think we have anything set up to vote on.
Andrea will be here probably within an hour.
Oh, that'll be great. Okay, so if we do need to vote, we can just delay it. So can I ask the members of the audience also to say hello, and maybe start with you?
I'm Rob Wilcox. I'm visiting from Squirrel, your
Great.
neighborhood association.
Welcome.
I'm Mary Fetch from the MAC.
Mary?
Steve Solomon.
Steve Solomon. And maybe go in the back there and then we'll hop over.
My name's Kelly Tasha.
Welcome.
Robin Shaughnessy. I'm Liz Cooksey and I'm a resident of Goose Hollow.
Good.
Michael Mixicek, also a resident.
Okay, jump over to Alan.
Alan Boston, Northwest Examiner.
My name is Greg Bourget. I work as the lead researcher and executive director of Portland Clean Air.
Welcome.
Sandy Blank, resident. Alpha Wilson, resident.
Scott Schaefer, resident.
And that bearded fellow back there. Great, welcome everybody. Okay, so excuse me for being a little bit behind the curve. I literally just got off the plane and drove over here. Does anyone have any comments or announcements they'd like to make before we get started for the evening?
Yeah, I do.
Eric?
I just like the sound of my own voice, but that's another story. They finally cleaned up along Montgomery near PSU. The encampment, they got rid of the porta potty. They did arrest somebody at 405 who I guess had an arrest warrant for arson. And then they also cleaned up the encampment at the 405 entrance. And what I've noticed is they're now posting multiple signage at various sites, even if there are no campers there, saying this is the date you have to leave. So I think they're trying to get a more coordinated action. And yet with that porta potty, my understanding is that's part of a pilot program, and so there might be a great many more of them being spread around Portland, but we'll have to wait to get some additional answers.
I have a question. Who's the they? Could you be more specific?
Houseless people.
No, but who's removing the house?
City of Portland.
Well, it was the city of Portland. They put up
Is it the police? Or
nobody really
Reebok
knows.
or
It was a plan that was approved by Wheeler. I spoke to, I think, Concerned Citizens, or whatever their name is. They really would not give me any information. I don't know who's sponsoring it, who takes care of the cleanup, or anything along those lines. It's really an enigma at this point.
It's the city of Portland. They have a new pilot project where they're trying to, they're not the police, they don't arrest, but they try and provide services that aren't covered under the joint office. So it's the garbage and things like that, cleanup.
Where is the area exactly? We're still talking
It's
about.
it's on Southwest Montgomery, between 12th and 14th on the 405 entrance and on the street.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, announcements?
Well, I guess I'll say, the TriMet board meeting was yesterday, the last one before they decide on what to do with the stations they want to close downtown. It seems like we have fought the good fight, but I don't have a sense that they will keep Kings Hill open. We will find out in a couple weeks.
Is there, if they do close it down, is there any way where they can just make it run again? Like if they find that 2,000 or 3,000 new people move into that part of the neighborhood, they say we really need it, they can just open it back up? Or once it's closed, it'll be closed forever?
Well, yeah, it's closed forever, and they would probably say that you could walk your 2 blocks, regardless of all the safety and security issues and things like that.
Can I have that big goose then?
I think you have to get in line, 'cause that's a pretty cool goose. I'm just saying. And I hear there's some goslings along the way. Okay.
So, Mary, what's the status of the other stations? Are they all?
I think the downtown stations, the mall right there at Pioneer Place, no one has really objected to that, so I think that's a
That's
given.
gonna go.
The Skidmore Fountain had a lot of people yesterday testifying and such. That one makes kind of the most compelling sense is that PDC, now Prosper Portland, has put millions of dollars. They've invested so much trying to bring that community up, so much development on the way. That one I would think they may consider to keep open at this point.
Or at least keep it open Saturday and Sunday for,
Yes, but that doesn't work for all the social services down there where the clients come Monday through Friday. So it's a mixed message.
Any other comments, announcements? Okay, great. Let's go to our invited presentations, and first is the Portland Clean Air. You want to just use the mic there?
Sure. And I brought a poster that is pretty relevant, but I'm not sure how I can hang it here.
Maybe we can just hold it for you.
Do you have a business card?
I have materials I can give you with my contact information.
Thank you.
Stand back a little bit so I can see everybody. I think it has to go higher. Is that, can everybody hear me? Is it even turned on?
It's turned on.
Yeah.
Was that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, look at that.
Okay, well, I'll start off with the map. This map we made by using the EPA's National Air Toxics Assessment data released in December of 2018, which is looking at diesel particulate throughout every census tract in the United States, but it's very chunky. So we applied it to ODOT's 24-hour truck counts. It's the first map ever made of an accurate portrayal of diesel particulate that's all data driven. It was made by a PhD candidate at PSU and represents about a year of data work. I'm concerned that Goose Hollow is located largely in what we call the red zone, which would be the highest concentration of diesel particulate in the city, and also the state, and also the country apparently. The EPA says that Multnomah County ranks in the worst 1.3% of counties for diesel particulate exposure. I think that's, as long as everyone's gotten a good look at the map, we've been busy making the map, but I can give you a email if you'd like to see it at your leisure. Thank you.
Great, yeah, we can forward that to the list.
Do you have it in digital form?
I do.
Okay,
Right.
so that might be something that you can send maybe to Sherry or send to me.
I've sent it to Tracy Prince, but I can
Oh,
forward it
okay,
to anyone.
I'm
who'd
related
like
to
it.
her, so.
Oh, great.
So I'm the one who usually posts it on the internet. And
Perfect.
so that would be, since it's been presented at the meeting, it's a public record, but it would be really good to have as part of the minutes as well. So-
Okay. How long is the agenda item for this, by the way?
We asked folks to stay around 10 minutes if that's possible.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll try to rush through it.
Okay.
In the last National Air Toxics Assessment, before the current one that was released in December of 2018, the previous one was August of 2015. And that one, that's when we started Portland Clean Air about 5 years ago. Portland was ranked as the worst city in the United States for respiratory distress from air pollution. And the area just below Goose Hollow was the worst census tract in the state for diesel particulate. They've changed that a little bit, and now the worst tract is by the Albina rail yards. That's a little bit about the problem, and I'm just going to skip over stack emissions. Half of our work is dealing with industries. We've ranked by health risk every industry in Portland using the DEQ's level 1 screening of emissions inventories. It took us 8 months, and I have that with me if anyone wants to know about stack emissions, but I don't think stack emitters are a big concern for Goose Hollow. So for diesel particulate, we thought that we should have a grassroots approach. Instead of sending a lobbyist to Salem, right now there is a diesel bill, and what they're currently bargaining for is they're agreeing on a 10-year wait to make any change. Now, California had a 7-year wait, but they did that 11 years ago. and now there's virtually no unfiltered trucks left in California. However, we went through ODOT and DMV records, and we found that 75% of trucks in these 3 counties are unfiltered. They put out 10 times as much diesel particulate as a normal truck. These trucks are illegal to manufacture in the United States since 2009. The problem that we're having with the diesel bill is that right now the Oregon legislature accepts unlimited corporate donations from politicians. That's illegal in 45 states. And they pay those donations back by striking down environmental legislation, which we have some of the worst in the nation. So we're not so much lobbying for a change, we're instead doing individual face-to-face negotiations with the industries. In the last 3 years, 8 industries have put up a stack control device at a cost of $70,000 to $20 million per industry. These were all voluntary, and these were all in negotiations with neighborhoods. We've been working on that now for 5 years, and we're continuing to do so with the worst polluters in the city, like Owens Brockway, who currently puts out 850 pounds of lead, cadmium, arsenic, and chromium in the Sumner neighborhood. But there's a number of, they're the worst according to the DEQ, but there's a number of industries like Precision Cast Parts is second, Columbia Steel Mill is number 3, et cetera, so we'll be focusing on the biggest 9. In terms of diesel particulate, we count 42 neighborhoods that have a red zone in their borders. We think that the power of numbers helps these negotiations, so what we've been doing for the past 3 years has been contacting neighbor associations. We've never contacted Goose Hollow before, but so far 41 neighborhood associations have provided us a liaison to their board. So some do 2 or 3. So right now there's about 46 liaisons who all know each other and I talk with regularly, and we're all working together to address this problem. We met, for instance, 2 nights ago at Jerry Fitterman's house in Elliott. Elliott is also ground zero for diesel particulate. In fact, the Harriet Tubman School, which is located in Elliott, they're telling the kids that they can't go outside, and they put an exotic electrostatic precipitator in the school to remove diesel while they're indoors. Jerry is very concerned about her neighborhood, and a number of associations feel like that a change must occur. And so there's 41 neighborhood associations ready for action, and also a church nearby is our first church to get involved, and also a coalition of 18 other churches just joined us to cooperate. We expect to have several dozen churches involved over the next couple of months. They've been very enthusiastic. The idea here is a negotiation, and we think to start it would be XPO Logistics, Consolidated Freightway, and USF Right-of-Way. These 3 trucking companies have 10,000 unfiltered trucks in this area. The biggest is XPO Logistics with 6,000 unfiltered trucks, and unusually no filters at all. Usually there's a mix of filtered and unfiltered with a company, but XPO Logistics appears to be using a business model of importing trucks from California that are illegal there and running them here in Portland. So the idea is to send in a negotiator and go talk with these trucking companies and make some sort of mini diesel bill. Instead of asking for the legislators to give us permission, instead we want them to follow better rules that are not required by the state of Oregon. We have a lot of tools to make that happen. For one, we've been talking to the lawyers that won on Bullseye Glass. They just won a $5.5 million mitigation settlement in their neighborhood. Those lawyers have given us ideas about trespass, loss of property value, and trespass, loss of property value. There's a third one in there. Nuisance. These are things that you can sue on. Also, we've been talking to an antitrust investigator. Apparently you can launch an antitrust lawsuit because collusion is illegal. Even if we don't win, it's a nightmare for trucking companies. We don't really want to sue them or have a direct action campaign or drag them through the media. What we prefer is some sort of reasonable response in which they're phasing out their trucks. California has virtually none of these left. We think that they should follow suit. And so I'm glad to answer any questions. I've come today to ask you to put forward a liaison. If I can't come to these board meetings, there's so many involved. Tracy Prince suggested that she would do it. So through a liaison, I can make proposals, like for instance, 4 neighborhoods have a letter to their polluter. They would like you to sign that letter. For instance, Overlook is asking the vinyl rail yards to put up a thermal oxidizer so they don't put 15,000 pounds of VOCs in there annually as they do currently. They'd also like them to use filtered trucks. They're one of 4 neighborhoods addressing Union Pacific, 3 Union, Pacific. There's a number of other neighborhoods that have letters to sign, and I think you'll have a letter of your own. I think that you all have your own interests. In these negotiations, Portland Clean Air is not involved. We think that would be co-opting of us to involve ourselves in a negotiation that involves your lives. So I'm glad to do the heavy lifting. You can think of us as a giant headless robot ready to do heavy lifting. But I think that you're ready for negotiations because I know you've been involved in a bunch of your own. So a liaison would be a great start. And so then I could proceed to send you letters and information, and I'm glad to answer any questions you have about any of this. We've extensively researched the health effects, who's responsible, and all the government records. We pulled the government records from 8 agencies to date.
Great, thank you so much for coming and sharing that. Scott, do you know, have you talked to Tracy about this, about becoming the liaison?
I mean, if she said so, I mean, she's worked with Portland for Clean Air, which is out Northwest, so she's already familiar with the issue kind of in general, so it doesn't surprise me that she's volunteered to be.
Okay, well, we think we have a liaison for you.
Great.
And we'll just confirm that and follow up by email. But in the meantime, does anybody have any other questions or comments or other aspects of this that they want to discuss?
For Steve and Mark.
I was gonna ask the board first and then the public,
Oh,
sorry.
good.
Just in terms of the board's response, anybody?
I'd like to know exactly what you would like. I'm sorry, my mouth is full.
The cookies are pretty tempting.
They are. I'd like to know a little bit more about what you want and expect from the liaison person.
Oh, sure. Well, some liaisons spend just an hour a month reading materials and communicating those materials or proposals to the board. Although some liaisons, live by a big threat, and some of them work 20 hours a week, believe it or not. But that's not an expectation. I think that people do what they want to do. We have so many volunteers involved in this project that no one has to be a hero.
So in other words, it could be as little as just, going back and forth from the board, or it could be as extensive as, getting an entire elementary school to have the entire PTA sign a petition.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
When do you envisage the need for a letter and maybe a vote from this board?
Oh, sure. Well, so last night, 8 neighborhoods, two neighbor association coalitions, and a PhD in toxicology and other folks met at Jerry's house. And because there's 42 neighborhoods that are directly stakeholders, we think that's unwieldy. So instead, there's going to be a smaller group of neighborhoods that are more active, enthusiastic, like downtown, Elliott, other areas that are more active, probably 6 or 7 that will lead the letter in the negotiations, of which everyone else will sign on. And so we're writing the letter currently. One of the state organizations working on the diesel bill is helping us write the demands that based on their experience with this diesel bill. But I think we could have that letter done within a couple of weeks.
What would you like to have people in this neighborhood sign, or board members sign, or have the board potentially we could pass a resolution of some kind?
So I would like this board and Elliott and downtown and a couple of neighborhoods to lead the negotiations with these industries. So for instance, if the negotiator went to go talk to, let's say, Consolidated Freightway, and Consolidated Freightway said, well, how about we'll get rid of all of our trucks that have no filter within 4 years, and we'll put down $10,000, probably a 5-page long agreement, right? That goes back to this board, and this board has to consider, is that a reasonable deal or an unreasonable deal? If you think it's bad, you can tell us to escalate. We stay out of the negotiations, but we're glad to do whatever you'd like us to do. We're ready for a massive campaign. So far, 4,000 people have donated to the campaign that are Portland residents.
Just follow up, so who would be negotiating? Yeah.
Someone that you and Elliott and downtown, other neighborhoods feels the right negotiator. Someone who's in your pocket, someone who you trust completely to do this
So
job.
we would kind of try to get a committee blessed by all the neighborhoods or something like this?
Yes.
Why would they even do that?
Why would they negotiate? Bullseye Glass didn't want to negotiate. Now it cost them $5.5 million in a settlement, $3 million in legal bills.
How do you put your foot in the door? I just can't see a neighborhood association liaison going to a CEO of a trucking company and getting 5 seconds of time.
We've been asking the associations to tell us how big their communication list is, both email and so on, email, Facebook, etc. We're counting right now, without the churches, that these 40 associations that are currently involved, and we're getting 20 more involved over the next couple of months.
These people are
Oh, let me-
corporate executives.
Oh, sure, let me finish. That their list currently are 250,000 Portland residents. With the churches, that's another 20,000. We don't think that corporate executives are gonna ignore organizations representing about 270,000 Portland residents. They're in no position to.
You're not even local.
They have a local office.
Local office.
During my work with Greenpeace, Earth First, the Mendocino Environmental Center, BARC, Gifford Pinchot Task Force, and other groups, we've won against much bigger companies than these.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, what are the, you showed us that map and you talked about the diesel particulate levels. What are the federal and the state requirements on levels of diesel particulate?
Sure.
And how does that compare to, what are the levels in Goose Hollow?
Sure. The federal government has no standards for diesel particulate, and nor do they recognize diesel particulate as a carcinogen, even though California, Oregon, and Washington recognize it as a carcinogen. So there are no federal rules at all on this one. And Oregon has no rules, so it's kind of a free for all.
And the city has no rules, I'm assuming?
The city's not allowed to have rules because they're preempted by the state of Oregon.
And how do we, you must know because it was on the map there, how do you know what the levels were at Goose Hollow?
On the matter of what exactly the levels are, although we know the truck counts from ODOT and we can extrapolate based on California and federal government science, what you really need is a GRIM electrometer. It's a $43,000 device. So far we have 7,000 been donated for that. We were also the first group in the United States, or the first anybody, I guess we're the first ones to receive consumer level PM1 monitors. We have 15 of them, and I have one in my bag if someone would like to take it and monitor your neighborhood. This gives you, it was co-located with DEQ equipment that cost about $30,000, and they said they're remarkably accurate. So that's a survey level device, and I think it's very useful. But a GRIM electrometer has 43 channels measuring between 0.01 microns and 3 microns. It goes down to the nanoparticles that come out of the tailpipe that are aggregated from 0.1 microns to 0.01 microns to 0.1 microns. So even when the nanoparticles come out and before they aggregate, you can measure them, tell you how many that there are, it destroys them and it counts their size. In Europe, when they have a diesel particulate problem, they can tell by cameras there's too many trucks. They come in with a GRIM electrometer, they count the number of particles, and they say, wow, this is dangerous, and then they shut down the number of trucks in that area. We're working to buy that device, but of course, we are right now only 70,000 out of 43,000.
So the one fancy one costs 43, and what did these other ones, something about 30,000?
They used to cost 30,000 up until this Pocket Lab Air has come up with a consumer level device worth 300 each. We bought 15 of them. They haven't really released them to the public yet, but they're just about to. They're really accurate for PM1, but they probably only go down to 0.3 microns. They're a survey level device. They tell you a fingerprint of diesel particulate.
That's 300 per monitor.
Yes.
Okay, and then isn't there some, well, maybe because there's no rules, isn't there some government group that's responsible for doing this monitoring, or is it up to, just average citizens?
The DEQ I've got a $100,000 grant to take samples, but they're only taking samples in 4 areas. Ours is a portable device that takes readings every 20 seconds, and so it can survey a large area. The DEQ is making a certain approach. It's also being studied by Dr. Linda George, but also, again, she's not releasing her data to the public. She's waiting to get published. So we've had a real problem getting any kind of measurement, so right now we're just buying the devices ourselves.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I would just like to add to the board, because you guys voted last month to spend money on these devices, so you may have to, think about that. You may have to redo that vote, because I can't remember what it was, but it was less than 300.
It was 50, so we'll have to revisit it. I think they approved 4, so we'll have to come back to that.
What kind of device, by the way?
I don't know, I thought Tracy had mentioned, so I thought it might have been coming through your organization.
Oh, I think we've been talking to different groups about purchasing different kinds of devices. We think the best is this device here, which I can leave a member of the group. Actually, I'm going to leave for Tracy. So this hooks
You
up
can
to an
monitor
Android
the
phone
bridge
right now.
numbers.
And it looks at PM1 and PM2.5, PM10 and ozone. And it's remarkably accurate. It uses a small laser. And we've been building these over, Brooklyn's been building these. They built 30 of them and put them around the neighborhood, around the city. But these ones are better because they can GPS and timestamp the sample. And so you can put on, we have bicycle mounts that we got. And you can just bicycle around the city and take continuous readings. And you can map the shapes that I showed you on the wall map, so we can get something more accurate than the wall map.
Oh, great.
Tracy's husband was here.
Right there.
Although we don't have an Android phone. Michael, do you have an Android
No,
phone?
I have an Apple.
You can use an Apple phone, but you can't take continuous readings, so it'll still be useful taking individual readings, and I can explain to you how to do it.
All right, great.
Steve had a question.
Steve?
Oh, yeah. Goose Hollow is not high. There's a flat part right next door, and then it goes up the hill, Kings Hill, all the way to the bush part. Is there a difference, or it's all the same?
There is. Elevation seems to be a mitigating factor. And so the higher you go, but it seems like even at 700 feet, people report excessive VOCs coming from Swan Island. So it seems like at 1,000 feet, you get a serious mitigation there. We talked to a neuroscientist, by the way. I brought the report with me from the neuroscientist. We asked why diesel particulate is so dangerous. Why is it the most dangerous carcinogen in the United States according to California risk assessments? California says that 70% of cancer risk from airborne pollution comes from diesel particulate, and that's for all airborne carcinogens combined. And that's for a state with filters. So we asked, why is it so dangerous? And she pulled up a lot of neuroscience articles. What they found is the diesel particulate goes into the lungs, and then it crosses into the blood freely, which is very unusual for a particle. It circulates in the bloodstream and hits all the organs. Normally, the blood-brain barrier would stop the diesel particulate from entering the brain, but in this case, it also comes through the nose, the nerve endings. It goes right up into the brain, shuts down the blood-brain barrier, and allows the particles to freely enter the brain. It carries with it VOCs and heavy metals that it attaches to at the tailpipe. So it's basically an ideal delivery system for particles to enter the body. In fact, they're looking at mimicking this to deliver drugs into the brain, because they can't even get drugs into the brain as good for healing people. So anyway, it's just an unusual, exotic stuff, and that's why the federal government banned these trucks nationwide, and California doesn't allow them to be registered in the state of California. But they all got dumped here. We just have a unique problem, and so that's why there's this massive movement to change it.
I don't understand. The federal government banned it nationwide,
The manufacturing of them.
the manufacturing.
Back in 2008, it was illegal to make an engine that didn't have a filter.
Oh, but you have all of these old ones.
And they're dumping them here, tens of thousands of them.
Could you remind us why we're allowing it?
Right, because in Oregon, a CEO typically gives $40,000 to a legislator running for Congress, our state legislature, excuse me. Those elections cost $1 million each, and those are the second most expensive elections in the nation behind only New Jersey. So we allow unlimited corporate donations. It's legal in 45 states. We got 50,000 signatures in the last election, and now it's illegal for a corporation to give money to a politician here in the city. It's been banned now in the city and also in the county. It passed by 87 and 89% of the vote. It's one of the most popular votes in history here. We're working on getting it through the state level with honest elections. However, it won't be on the ballot until 2020, and so we can't get an immediate solution to essentially corporate financing of elections. So now we're stuck in this negotiation situation. But that's been going pretty well. Look at Precision Cast Parts. They just spent $20 million on mitigations. They're a giant, one of the biggest companies in the United States, but they're being sued right now, and they just mitigated because it's just not worthy. It's not smart business to be fighting the city. We're Portland, not North Dakota. I think they get that.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, Precision Parts, I understand, is in Warren Buffett's
That's right.
portfolio. Could you appeal to him and leverage?
Well, that's with Precision. Right now, they're considered the second most dangerous industry by the DEQ after the mitigations. But yes, we're on that with 2 neighborhoods nearby. But with this diesel particulate, we're looking at these trucking companies. XPO Logistics bought out Conway, and now Home Depot and Amazon is looking at buying them. They probably don't want to fight the city, and so But then if they wanna fight, we probably could fight. I mean, there's a lot of power in these associations, and these associations tend to win on land use issues. Air is a new thing, but we're also one of the most dangerous air sheds. So it seems like most companies will just cooperate. That's what we're finding with stack emitters. They wanna make a deal, they don't wanna fight.
I'm really ignorant about this, I just have to say, you're using some of these terms. What is an air shed?
Oh, sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. So an air shed is an area of air. In this case, air pollution tends to travel about 1 mile. After it travels about 1 mile, it tends to dissipate. So Swan Island, if you live near Swan Island, you have Swan Island air problems. But as you get a mile away, like you are here, more than a mile, you don't really have that concern. So the problem that you're having here in Goose Hollow is that you're right by this highway. You're so close to it. The diesel particulates coming from that road where short haul trucks are basically pacing back and forth, making deliveries using this highway right nearby as a hub. And so it inordinately affects this neighborhood. As you get further away, you're not really affected so much. I live at 16th and Morrison. It's quite good on the map. We find that it doesn't travel as far as we think. It doesn't seem to travel indoors as much as we think. We're studying how its movement is, but I think Goose Hollow is just extremely and unusually affected, like Elliott neighborhood.
So, Steve and Sherry, I know this is an important issue, and I would encourage you to keep going and investigate this and ask, be in contact with Clean Air Portland and others. I'm conscious of the fact that we're over 30 minutes.
Oh, so sorry.
I'm not telling you to leave yet, but I just wanted to kind of wrap it up. If there's any other final comments, or you would like to make final comments, leave us with information and so on, yeah.
So here's our most recent reports about stack emitters and the risks to human health. So I'll just
Great, thank you. Thank you, and we'll follow up with, I think Tracy, it sounds like, will be our liaison, and we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Please, and if you'd like to talk to me, outside, I'll be leaving right now, but you could call me or you could email me, and I'm glad to. We have a whole team to answer your questions. We have an amazing array of people with PhDs and master's degrees helping us answer these questions. So I'd love to help you understand where you live and what you might want to do about that. And then thank you so much for going over time and so on. And thanks for having me. I appreciate
That's terrific, thank you very much, thanks for coming. Okay, we've got some representatives from Southwest Hills Residential League here, the Transportation Committee representative, and we're going to be talking about hiking paths and bike lanes, and some of the public stairs and bike lane issues.
Hi, I'm Rob Wilcox. I actually came here in 2017 to talk about the Middle Street Terrace steps.
Right.
And what those are, I don't know if people know about them. Unfortunately now they're closed. They start on Market Street, and they go up to Middle Street Terrace, which is right above the Highway 26 tunnel on the hill. And then they used to go up all the way to this way. But some building happened there, and they've been blocked. So we would like that route reopened by that or another route. And we'd like to work with you and the city to explore that.
So you want
We'd like to do that too, yeah.
Well,
I think we've taken that position already.
Yes, you said you would support us
Yeah.
at the city.
Can I ask you, what exactly, tell me specifically what you're asking in terms of what you want, in terms of opening this, could you just briefly?
Okay, so we want the city to reestablish that route. And we want help from the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association, because you know this side of it, in the form of volunteers, just regular volunteers, skilled volunteers. And we're starting a new project, that's suggested by this gentleman, and that is to collect stories about people's experiences with these steps, all the steps in the neighborhood. Because that we can bring to the city as a narrative about how important these are.
I had a question to ask. The steps you're referring to, that's actually on private property, correct?
So
The reason I bring that up is I know we've discussed it at our planning committee meetings recently. If I'm correct, that there's a house on Vista, and that's where they closed it. Am I right?
The house on Mill Street Terrace is
On
where
Mill
it's
Street,
closed.
okay.
And two deeded rights of way or easements were lost. One with the explicit permission of Peabody, which blows my mind.
Lost meaning they were vacated, or?
Let's see, in the first case, when the building permit was issued, the city didn't find the easement during the transportation review.
Oh.
We actually found it.
So they were recorded, they just didn't see them, is that what you're saying?
In the second case, the neighbors asked to destroy a set of city steps, and Peabody let them do it. They issued a revocable easement to do that. Now, the other concern we have is, if you look at the property up there, there were a couple of lots that were owned by Michael Powell, which shifted to a Vancouver investor. And they own properties that span an active set of steps. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the same kind of nonsense occur of them asking the city, oh, they're not used that much, they don't go anywhere, so can we just tear them out? And that's exactly what the other neighbors already did in a very similar situation, Jason. So we'll send something asking.
So we will certainly work with you on that, and as we said before, we're eager to see if we can make that happen. So I think Jerry is probably the point person on that.
I had a question because my friend and I walk there all the time. And then when we realized, so from the bottom, it doesn't appear that there's a problem. So you can go all the way to the top and then find out you have to go all the way to the bottom because you can't get across their barrier. So I'm not quite clear, is it Peabody that told them that they could, I think they have caution tape. What do they have across there at Vista?
Nothing.
But you can't get down.
No.
Some kind of,
Oh, there's construction going on.
Yes.
That is
Right.
temporary.
Right.
pardon?
That's temporary.
Oh, just to hold the hill up there?
So
No, that's not, because the stairs at the top, so if you
Right,
walk
right.
all the way to the top to Vista,
Right, right.
it's blocked off.
It's blocked off at Vista just temporarily,
It is?
yes.
Oh, okay.
But, and the reason is that vacant lot at 1610 Southwest Vista is now being built.
With three, I think,
One large house,
oh,
and that's the one if you're standing on Vista and you're facing east,
yeah.
and you're right at the top of those stairs, to your left is where they're building that house.
Okay.
So the stairs going down alongside that new house are still active, and they're still owned by the city, and they have been maintained by the city historically. I mean, in fact, they were improved a couple of years ago.
So is it Peabody who told them that they could block it off?
Probably, just because construction blockage, it's not a permanent.
Oh,
And if you really want to go down it, they're kind of chain link fences and sections. You just buy it, right? You really-
I have your permission?
No, but it's city property, I don't see why they could block you. This is, I think, safety.
All right.
I'm actually surprised that they put the fence there rather than leaving the steps.
You know, we can't hear behind you.
Oh,
So
it
when
should
you
be, I
said-
thought this was, oh, good,
You're-
I'm sorry.
You're facing that way when you're talking. What was it you said you suggested people do if you couldn't get?
So right now, there's construction on Vista. And they put up some temporary construction fencing. But it seems like they're not always working there. And when they were working there, I asked them, can I walk down there? They said, sure, so they opened the fence. But you could open the fence yourself and walk down there.
Thank you.
Robert, I just have a quick, you last,
Wilcox, W-I-L-C-O-X.
and do you have some information to contact you if I wish to contact you?
I'll send something to you that you can publish. What we're going to be doing is setting up a way for people to tell their stories And then we're trying to get a few other volunteers working on this, and your people will contact them.
So you will send to the GHFL board contact information and instructions on specifically what you want us to do, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Great, thanks for coming, and yeah, we'll keep working with you on that. We're eager to see that happen.
And I'll dovetail Rob. So Rob and I are both from Squirrel. I'm Ryan Feedy. And Lisa Caballero is our transportation chair in Squirrel. So, this was a point issue that came up where we have mutual interest, I believe, in a transportation, key transportation route. As well, we share a boundary and have overlapping boundaries. And so the conversation we met with Tracy a while ago was, where can we get ahead of some of these issues and discuss where we have common interest between Squirrel and Goose Hollow that we can work on the transportation front. And one of the things that we've been working on in Southwest that Rob was actually a representative for was a city initiative called Southwest in Motion. And have folks heard about that initiative or familiar with, by show of hands? Anyone?
Heard a little bit about it.
So it's just wrapped up. So it's great timing to go take a look because the public comment period is open through May 24th. And so Rob brought a copy. This is the report that they did. This was modeled after East Side in Motion that they did a few years ago, and they're doing one for Central City, Northwest, and Southwest as well. So this is the Southwest in Motion version, and if you take a look at it and look at the projects, you'll see there's projects in here that will be of interest to you, I believe, that help navigate, make it more walkable and bikeable to get from here up to Council Crest and through Southwest.
How long is that? Is that what you have in your hand? It's not,
Yeah.
how many pages, is that a large thing that you're leaving us?
Can you read this copy, Rob?
That's my copy, but you can have it.
Oh, we can get it online,
Request
right?
from the city, but
We can get it online?
You
Yeah.
can get it
We
online.
can
Just get it online,
can
yeah,
send you
no,
the
we don't
information.
need to take your
You don't need
printed
to kill
copy, thank you. That's
Pardon me,
offer.
you don't need to kill some more trees.
But if you just search for Southwest in Motion in Portland, you can find it.
Okay.
And right on the homepage to the project link on PBOT's website is the link to the survey as well. So I'd encourage you all to take a look and submit your comments on the survey for the projects that are of interest. The main body of the report's this long, but if you basically just look at the map that shows the main projects, you get an idea of the ones that will be of interest. In particular, to call out a few, Lower Montgomery and Upper Montgomery are on there, so making Lower Montgomery more walkable, bikeable, with improvements to expanded shoulder, uphill bike lane as well. And then Upper Montgomery, we've already talked to the city to make sure that gets designated as a greenway, and so it can start to get some improvements, and they told us they can start that this fall, actually. So that's the other key point on these projects is most of them are implementable within the 5-year time frame. It's low cost, no cost stuff we can start doing right now. It's not the major capital improvements for the most part. There is an appendix in here that lists what other big capital improvements would be of interest. As an example, the lower 405 path, so the multi-use path extending from along 405 to connect in from Goose Hollow into Southwest down by Barber is one we're going to make sure it gets highlighted in there as one of the capital projects that's in PBOT's long-term plans that we want to make sure is on their radar.
One last thing.
Yeah.
Your name is Ryan, what is your last name?
Last name is Feedy, F as in Frank, E-D-I-E.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for us in Squirrel, the main things we're trying to make sure are covered is the main arterials. So think, Broadway, which you really can't walk or bike on today. Patton, Dosh, Fairmont Loop is another one, improving walking and biking on Fairmont Loop. As I mentioned before, Montgomery as another one. Patton up by St. Thomas More.
Markham Hill Road.
Markham Hill
hospital
Road.
Up to Fairmount.
Yep.
Is on there. And this covers all of Southwest, like way out. So there's quite a few different projects.
And that's the main road ones. Trails are part of it as well, so we're mentioning where there's, working with Southwest Trails, trails that would be of interest to improve, in particular, the cable route. So that's Southwest Trail number 6, that would connect 18th and Jefferson around there, so follow 18th. It would actually allow a trail to go up and connect with 18th up into Portland Heights. That's been approved as the official route since 2000 when the Urban Trails Plan was adopted by the city, but yet to be built. So any questions on Southwest in Motion or the sampling of projects I mentioned that we think will be of interest to you guys too if we can get them through?
Any other questions, comments?
I'm looking forward to getting the, something sent, with very specific information about, what your expectations are.
Yeah.
We can find it ourselves
We
and
can?
share it with the board, yeah.
Yeah, and if you take a look in here, they have, 1 page per project that's listed, so you can go to the projects that are of interest and take a look at what they're recommending and then send your comments in. The second piece related on transportation I'd mentioned is the other area of mutual interest we have that we've been discussing with TriMet is improvements in bus service, particularly line 51 that we share. And they have a Southwest enhancement plan that TriMet approved a handful of years ago, I believe it was 4 years ago. And in there, their recommendation was to merge lines 39 and 51. So the new route would start at Lewis and Clark. 39 currently goes from Lewis and Clark up towards OHSU, I believe. This instead would start the combined 39 and 51 at Lewis and Clark, bring it up through Hillsdale, to finally get bus service through Hillsdale, up Dosh, and then follow the existing route of 51 into downtown. It also increased the service from today to add midday service, evenings, and weekends, is what was proposed. And so we've talked with TriMet quite a bit to understand what moves it up the list to actually get it enacted. We heard last year from TriMet that they put their largest service expansion in their history in place, and we have yet to see or hear when this line 39 and 51 merger and service enhancement gets improved for Southwest. We have recently talked with Ozzie Gonzalez, so he's the TriMet Board of Directors that serves District 2, which we share. We're both in District 2. And have been starting discussions with him to understand what can move it forward. And we have a lot of data we've been getting from TriMet to understand how they rank and what's their criteria for making decisions to move these projects forward. So I encourage you guys as well. I think that's an area we could share of interest in getting that service enhancement made from TriMet. Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, and we have old business. The only item I have here is the board emails that were exchanged this month. Anybody have any to report? Seeing none. Tracy asked me to pass along that she had an email. Let me look at it here and read it exactly the way she asked me to. Tracy sent an email about board behavior at meetings, quote unquote. Okay. Moving on.
Excuse me, Tracy sent an email about board behaviors at meetings to the GHFL?
Yep. Ask her for the details, but okay, approval of minutes, April 2019.
I have a couple of corrections that I need to make that were pointed out to me.
Okay, you can let us know what those are and then we can vote.
Okay, so the only thing that, let's see, I need to, Mark Belkin pointed out a number 5, and instead of in front of process, it should just say need a process. So that needed to be corrected. And also on number 8 and number 9, in favor it should be 7 and absent 3 instead. That needs to be corrected. And the treasurer report on favor 8 and absent 3. So those two little the numbers of votes and that adding that in front of 5. And that's
Great,
all the things.
okay.
Is that okay?
Cal,
I move we approve the minutes with the
have a
changes.
second?
Second.
So, Cal moves and there's a second. And then, by the way, we do have a quorum now.
Yep.
So, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
6.
Is that unanimous? Yeah, none opposed? Unanimous.
Okay, so it's what?
7,
7?
No, 6.
6, sorry, 6.
6-0 approved.
I'm schizophrenic, but I only get one vote.
Vote early and vote often, right?
Okay.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Sorry,
Wait.
treasurer's report.
Well, Treasury, we really don't have a treasurer, and I'm not allowed to run again. So I do have the information to give, because it got forwarded to me. So I can do that until we.
Okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing
So
that.
the checking account is $4,875.40. The savings is $250.18 for a total of $51.25. I think I might have added wrong. Total of $51.25.58, and I think we made a penny. So
Okay.
that's it.
Sounds familiar. Okay, motion to approve the report. Cal, second?
Second.
Cal moved it,
Andrea, move.
and Andrea seconded.
All in favor?
Are we
It's
missing-
unanimous?
Yeah.
We're missing somebody.
Aye.
Yeah, this is.
So it's 6-0?
Agreeing, approving, 6-0.
6-0.
Yep.
And I'll give you a copy of this, Sherry.
Oh,
And-
thank you.
And we don't need to decide this right now, but if someone is interested in performing the treasurer's role, it would be greatly appreciated. So please consider that, and let's try to get that resolved by the next meeting. Anybody who, I've done it before, and I would do it, except that I'm gone so much these days. But somebody who's maybe available, I can say, and I think Eric can say that it's not a whole lot of work.
Well, at this point, with no Goose holidays, I don't think there are any checks to write,
Right.
except one to yourself as you leave. The other question is, I would like, there were 2 committee meetings that we were not able to get to last month, and I'd like those to be put at the front of the committee report.
Sure, which are those?
Well, one I know was the NWNW, and then I think planning. Because we adjourned a little bit after 9, and we didn't have a chance to hear from
Okay,
either of those
so
committees.
Scott, are you gonna do planning?
I am, so
Okay.
Jerry sent me his report, and I'll just go ahead and read it now and field any questions.
Okay, great, why don't
people
you do
have.
that, and then you're gonna do,
Yeah, I'll do the-
okay, perfect, let's do that.
Yeah, and so Sherry, you can just call to the report, and it would just be an attachment to the minutes when we post it. So you can just say, see attached planning committee report, or something like that, so you don't need to take any notes.
Okay, see attached.
Planning committee report. And then you can just go ahead and sit and listen, and then you don't necessarily need to do it.
Thank
Because
you.
it'll all be included.
Great, thank you.
Meeting convened a little after 7 p.m. Kurt Schultz, who is the architect with Sarah, who's involved with this project that I'm about ready to talk about, presented his concept for a half-block mixed-use building on the east side of Southwest 17th between Alder and Morrison Street. So just to orient you guys, that is a block down or closer to the McDonald's, a block closer to McDonald's from the tall art building, which is by the Artist Repertory Theater. And if anybody wants to take a look at it, it's like this. It's the latest drawing of that building.
I was at the meeting, and I think there was a lot of general consensus that it was a good design.
Okay. Yeah, the project is anticipated to be a 7.5-story, 6.5-story on Morrison Street, because it's in the lot. about 70 feet high. Construction would be brick veneer with glass and span with columns, belt lines between first and second floors, and again between fifth and sixth floors, about the height of the parapet on the Commodore Hotel apartment next door. Can you tell that Jerry wrote this, by the way? Former planner.
Hurry up, Jerry. No.
They expect to provide storefronts on Morrison and on Alder. Vehicle access would be from 17th about mid-block for loading and a small underground parking area, likely for no more than 14 cars. So keep in mind it's going to be a lot of one-story or studio apartments and very little parking. Keep in mind. Developers don't plan to excavate the whole basement. They feel the cost of shoring may overload the cost structure and only result in a few more parking spaces. Any questions about that project? We briefly discussed the Lincoln Design Advisory Review at Lincoln High School. The meeting on the 16th and the 1500 Taylor Design Review that afternoon. So that happened today. Neighborhood Association is on record with several observations with respect to Lincoln High School interaction with Goose Hollow, and has consistently hammered the same themes at previous DARs. I think what Jerry is trying to say is we want to have, as a neighborhood, access to the site as often as possible. And right now, what Lincoln is trying to do is say, think of the children's safety first, let's close it off during the school hours. So they're still hammering out the details of when it's going to be, when the campus is going to be open with Peabody. And we're trying to inject ourselves into that process and try to get as much access as possible. So stay tuned. Goose Hollow Planning Committee has recommended support of the 1500 Taylor design. I'll show you a picture of that. That's what this project looks like. It's another apartment building. It's going to be across the street from a building that looks nearly identical to that.
Head of any
Any what?
valve?
Yes, it does. Actually, the changes added balconies, so that's one thing.
Wasn't that something we had discussed, was the balconies?
We did, I don't know if it was on this project. We certainly discussed it on the project that's right over here, right across from Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that we necessarily discussed it with this project. The current proposal for a we're switching topics now. First of all, any questions about Lincoln High School or the Taylor Street project? Yes.
So what's the problem with access to the campus? And like, why would neighborhood people need access to the campus during school hours is my question.
Well, so the idea is that right now it's a super block that pretty much blocks the north-south flow of either walking or biking traffic or even
So is it
car
on the
traffic.
sidewalk?
So it actually, so this is 18th and it goes all the way to 15th. And so there is a right-of-way, theoretical right-of-way on 17th that should go all the way across the site, and 16th that should go all the way across the site. But 16th is completely blocked by what will be the athletic field, so there's no crossing that. 17th is what they're really aiming for to try to get bike access, because it's really difficult to ride bikes where the max line is, and so they're trying to push traffic a block east, and that would be the perfect spot as long as it's open. The problem is that they're just going to slide a fence closed during school hours, and you can't walk across the site there or bike across the site. And so there's no need to, other than it would be really nice to be able to have that access go across the site so that you can, for instance, go into the 18th Street Tunnel and then go on the Ho Chi Minh Trail to PSU.
Okay.
That's really the way they're trying to structure it.
And there's no other way around for, like, I mean, is it just like more convenient, like there's other ways?
It's just more convenient.
Okay,
Yeah.
just, having come from high school not way too long ago, the concern of, especially in a neighborhood like this, as a high school student, I would be concerned about people having access to my campus and, being free to walk through and take advantage of that potentially, and
Right.
I can see that side of
Yeah.
protecting the students, even if it is catastrophic thinking, it's still, you know, it's better safe than sorry.
That's exactly what it is. So PBOT is on our side. They really want to have as much access as possible to the site. And PPS is exactly what you said, is we need to have the kids feel safe on their own campus.
Mhm.
And so somewhere in the middle is going to be a
Yeah,
compromise
some
that
sort of
everybody
compromise.
can.
Yeah.
Have they been working on any kind of a compromise?
Yeah, yes. PPS, like I said, PPS and PBOT have been talking to each other, and we're trying to inject ourselves in the
Because
process.
the only thing that I can see is if they do somewhat of a solution that they're gonna be doing at the Rothko Pavilion, where the Portland Art Museum is, where they're going, whereas there is a pathway now, that's gonna be all enclosed, but they're gonna be giving access, I believe, from 7 in the morning to 11 PM for people with bicycles and dogs. So you're literally gonna go into the museum, and they'll have, you know, security of sorts, because that's also well utilized.
Right.
So.
So right now, I think the way it's gonna work out is that, I don't know if it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning is when they close it off. And then from 8 until 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's still closed. Then after that, so basically only during school hours is it gonna be closed. So on the weekends, it's gonna be open till 11 o'clock at night. On the weekdays, it's gonna be open from the end of school to 11 o'clock at night. And I think they're gonna open it up maybe at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there is gonna be a short period of time in the morning during school days that will be accessible. Then during the summer, it's open. That's where I think they're headed. But we don't have anything written down that I can report on that. So we're working on it. Yeah, Mark?
Well, just one thing to add, Scott, is that also helps the businesses along Jefferson, and that by having, you know, better access, and then, you know, since they're supposed to be building up Jefferson, that's kind of goes to Andrea's question. It was also done to do that.
But there's also, you know, it's also not necessary, it might be beneficial to the businesses, but there is other access, and is it worth the weight of, you know, the safety, or, I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have another 2,000-3,000 people living in the flats. And if
Yeah.
those people want to walk in this direction, you know, the more eyes on the ground, I think the safer it will be.
Yeah, that's true.
So if it's more accessible and you have hundreds of people walking and biking across there, then it will be a very, very safe area, I think. But we're still having that discussion. They did have a design advisory review meeting this afternoon that I went to, and they have made a few changes in the past few months, which I think are making it a lot more attractive building. It looks like this right now.
Keeps on getting smaller.
Well, so because of cost cutting, you know, it used to be that they were gonna be up to maybe 9 stories, then 8 stories, and then 7 stories for a long time. And then they got the bid back from the contractor, and they said, oh, we need to start really cost cutting a lot. So now this is 6 stories. This is 6 stories tall. And that's as tall as
Hopefully
it's
no
going to be.
elevators, they can get some good exercise.
Yeah, there are gonna be some big steps, but also some elevators, thank goodness. So there's no brick, even though it's brick colored, so it's gonna be big concrete panels of various sizes to at least show some visual interest, and now they've added some kind of terracotta color, sandstone color panels as well in there. So the design advisory review went really well for Portland Public Schools. The commissioners were very supportive of the project and said that they've made great improvement. And probably the best news is what I heard from the PPS representative, which is they got bids out, kind of preliminary bids for all the work, and they were under budget. So he said this is the first project they've ever done in living memory where they didn't have a problem with the budget. So they've been very good at doing cost cutting throughout the process, so that when they reach this point, the plan that they propose to move forward is something that they can afford to do. So that's good news.
I'm just wanted to know, so you have, you know, you're a parent and this is your local school. So are the parents, the PTA happy, the teachers happy, the other parents, how are they feeling about how it's shaping up?
I've heard a lot of positive comments. You know, you may not remember, but I'm part of something called the Design Advisory Group, And so I'm kind of like the neighborhood representative on this group. There are about 20 to 30 people that come from all different parts of the Lincoln School District. So there are parents of current students, there are alumni of the school, there are parents of students that are not even in school yet. They're maybe at Chapman or Ainsworth or something like that. You know, business owners, just kind of people from different walks of life that can kind of contribute their ideas about how the school is shaping up. And so we're feeding information and feedback to the architects and to the school district during these monthly meetings, and that's why the design has changed over this period of time due to feedback. And so, you know, we obviously haven't talked to the hundreds of teachers and parents, but we have kind of a small sample of the people that are part of this group, and they seem pretty excited by the project.
It seems like you really, all of you have had a lot of really good communication.
Yeah, you know, the problem with these kind of things is architects and the school district has something in mind, and we're not sure how much we're being listened to, you know, because we're proposing a lot of different things that don't make it in the final plan, but a lot of it is like, oh, we would like this thing here, and then they come back with, oh, that would require a retaining wall that will cost over $500,000, it's gonna break our budget. And so we kind of understand, once they explain to us why they can't do it, but it doesn't mean that if they really push for it, that they would go ahead and do something. You know, I mean, my issue is, you know, how, is this gonna be a neighborhood amenity? And so I've always approached it that way. How do we turn this into a neighborhood amenity? Yes, it's going to look really nice from the street and have a lot of active uses and people are gonna be excited for it, but are we gonna be able to use the field? You know, when are we gonna be able to walk across the site? Are there other things that we can use, the auditorium and other, you know, conference rooms and things like that, that will be an amenity for the neighborhood? So I'm really trying to push on that part.
Can I ask a question about adult courses? So there was, at the beginning, there was quite a bit of talk about having more education for adult, you know, classes available for adults to learn. Is that still in the mix?
I would imagine so. It's, the square footage of the school is gonna be more than 50% more than what they currently have. So it's gonna be a lot bigger, and obviously a lot newer, and a lot more flexible. They're designing it kind of for modern learning. And I know that Peyton Chapman, the principal, really wants to be programmed for the entire day, so all the way to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So you're gonna see activity happening in that building almost year-round, all day.
That's exciting.
I think it's very exciting.
Yeah.
It ain't exciting if it goes to 11, because I hear everything that goes on in that field.
Well, I don't think the football games are going.
I hear every single play through the loudspeakers.
Oh, yeah, that's that, no. No, it's just, they're gonna have meetings at the Whisper Society at 10 or 11 o'clock at night,
Wow.
so it'll be very quiet.
Yeah, and
So that's, so really just the three things. So is the new project in Alder, which is 7 stories, you know, 6 to 7 stories, or 6.5 to 7.5 stories. Another apartment project with very limited parking and small units, but it's gonna take up a spot that is part parking lot, part 1-story building, so it's gonna add a lot of activity to that area. There's the one that's on Taylor and 15th, and that's gonna be 6 stories tall, so 7 stories tall. And that's gonna add another, you know, 120 apartments or so, but it's also gonna have limited parking. And then the Lincoln High School project. One thing that I've heard is that, you know, we have the Press Blocks project, and there's 2 parts to it, right? There's the commercial building that they're currently building on the half block across from Providence Park. And then there's the other one, which is the full block area where the Oregonian printing press is, and that was gonna be the really tall residential
The
building.
slab urban.
yes.
So that hasn't started yet, but someone, I read online that they've applied for a shoring permit like a few days ago. So it seems to be moving along, and I haven't talked to the developer in a month or so, so I don't know, I don't have any updates on that project other than it still seems like they're moving it along, so seems like that's moving forward. So that's all I have for the planning report.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
Oh, I have actually 2 reports for Neighbors West Northwest. From the April 10th meeting, There was a report on the Civic Life 3.96 Code Committee. That's actions to be determined. They're moving very slowly. But what's coming up from Sukri is maybe changing open meeting rules, even regarding neighborhood associations. So the standards may be changed. It's still a work in progress, and I think they
Changed
added
as in
one extra.
deregulated? As in-
Nobody really knows. Some of the people that have been there have said, well, you should raise the other organizations to our standards, not lower our standards to, say, business associations or whatever. So nobody really knows. In addition, the directors and chairs meeting, which used to be done, I think, every quarter, are no longer having scheduled meetings. Instead, they're having for employees educational seminars. So this way they don't have to invite the public. Monies for the coalitions may be cut by 1% from previous budget years. They also discussed neighborhood goals, and for GHFL, I was going to bring it up at our meeting on 4/18 for us to present on 5/8 at NWNW, but unfortunately, we didn't have an opportunity for that. And so Roger and I have worked independently, and that'll be in my next report. Then we also, I've had an ongoing concern dealing with certain disparaging emails that were written about me from the Downtown Neighborhood Association and the previous president of NWNW. And I was finally able to get it voted 5-2 to have it discussed at the NWNW meeting on 5/18. And so now we come to the on 5/8. Now we come to the May 8th meeting. They also had a presentation from Portland Clean Air with Greg, who was here earlier today. So he pretty much went over everything that he went here. We also went over the various disparaging email threads that were sent to me from 2/26 to 3/6/19. And then NWNW, after discussion, voted to endorse the letter statement from the newly elected DNA president and DNA board disavowing the emails from the previous DNA president and DNA board. And the only reason I bring that up is they were exceedingly disparaging, and I wasn't going to stand for it. So the letter, and I'll be quick with this, is I am responding to specific emails which were critical of Eric Simon of the GHFL that were sent from president at PortlandDowntownNeighborhoodAssociation.com to the NWNW board between 2/26/19 and 3/6/19. My communication here is to declare that I, as the recently elected president of the DNA, do not understand or support the claims made in these emails. In addition, the current board was not aware of these emails or their claims and therefore does not support them. And then it's signed by their president. And they're going to be doing the same thing regarding the disparaging emails from the previous president of NWNW. And that I'll probably get a copy at the next meeting. So that's that. The budgets, again, of all the various coalitions are to be cut by 1% at least, and the vote by City Council will be in June of 2019. There was additional discussion of the 3.96 code change. There is going to be an open public meeting at City Hall on 5/20 at 5:30 p.m. if anybody wants to give any input on that. And they will providing dinner. I don't know what it is, but it's usually reasonably good.
Like
So that's
pizza or something?
I'm sorry?
Pizza or something?
Pizza, sometimes they'll do ethnic type foods, but it's usually pretty good. And again, that's at City Hall on 5/20 at 5:30 p.m. We also had to provide neighborhood goals, so because we didn't have an opportunity to go over this with our board last month, Roger and I gave them a whole list. They wanted 3, we gave them like, I don't know, 10 or 12, but the basic premise that we gave them was that for neighborhood goals, Goose Hollow follows the adage from Bud Clark, and I quote, that GHFL was created by residents and business owners to defend Goose Hollow from outside forces not acting in the neighborhood's best interests and to create a vision of greater livability. And then from there, we issued just some basic things saying too that we have really no goals in our bylaws, but we deal with whatever changes that may occur according to circumstances and emphasis in the neighborhood. In this case, and I use this as an example, the Good Neighbor Agreement, which whether we agree with it or not, the city council, I believe, just passed it, but to deal with, let's say, the ride share at the end of the game, how that's going to affect the neighborhood. With all the construction that Jerry just went through, in terms of how walkable and how livable will our neighborhood be for the next 2 to 3 years. And really, as things change, so do our emphasis in what we try to understand and go after. So that is it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's a great report. Any comments?
You might want to request an apology from Eric for slamming you.
Calling you Jerry.
Calling you Jerry.
Jerry
I
Schaefer.
have something to say about,
Go ahead, Scott.
no, I'm channeling Jerry.
And now I'm gonna
Oh,
say,
It'll take me another 15 minutes to get it
You're-
done.
I will say,
You
just
do
for
have
the
an
record,
invitation.
Jerry's long-standing work is much esteemed and much admired, and we appreciate it greatly. Cal?
I'd just like to make the comment that I, for one, would like to commend Eric for being like a dog in a bone on this issue of disparagement by the former president of the downtown neighborhood.
I second that
And,
sentiment.
I
You
work
and
for
Roger
tips.
both.
Here's my tip jar.
And that hopefully this will get saner voices and more appropriate behavior.
If that's the
from
case,
people
you're
by
gonna have to
email and
replace me
person.
pretty soon.
I just have a quick question, Aaron.
Yeah, sure.
So what you gave me before, you want me to type this up and put this into the
No, I'm
record?
gonna give you something that I typed.
Okay, so this is null and void now?
It's crap over.
It's,
There you
okay.
go.
So this, okay, I'll give that back to you. So this is what you want me to write?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, communications, let's jump to that. Mark or Scott? Who's going?
I'm not on the committee.
Then Scott.
I don't think that there's anything new.
Nothing
to
current.
report. I guess the only thing that is kind of committee, communications committee-ish is the whole issue of the mural, and, because that was originally part of our purview, and there's nothing new to report, although you may have noticed that I put some information asking for volunteers in the latest email, the board email, and that showed the visual image of what the mural is supposed to look like. And so we've already gotten some interest from people, so I think we just need to start, continue working with the city, and I've started that process and picked up where Mark left off, and we'll try to get necessary permits and try to get our schedule and fundraising done so that we can put this.
Fabulous, great project.
So you're.
Cal?
So what's the current target time for getting that mural work done? Or is it?
I think it's, Mark, remember, was it September? Something
Well,
like
yeah,
that?
she wanted to do it in,
Early October.
Yeah.
It's just really mainly the artist's schedule. I mean, obviously, summer would be the best, but the artist is really not available during the summer, so it would have to be right after the summer, September.
I think you're gonna be, it's gonna be a miracle if everything comes together by then, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that we can do, whether we can do it by September or not, or we have to wait until next year. But I think this is something that has generated a lot of excitement, and it's something that we can take on.
Yeah, you're here.
My understanding, from what Mark had told us last month, I think September is, pie in the sky, just for the simple fact in terms of getting the city and Peabody to agree to who maintains that, and then getting the various permits and or variances. It's like when the city says it's on the fast track, well, that means they'll let you know within 5 years. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but I really think it's unrealistic to think you can get it done sometime this year.
So we met with the head of maintenance at ODOT on Friday, actually, Tracy Milligan. And I just was tagging along because I was taking Tracy to the airport, and I mentioned the tunnel project to the guy. He's like the main guy at ODOT. He's like in charge of just about everything around here. And so what he suggests is to get everybody in the room. And so earlier this week, I sent an email out to our PBOT contact, another ODOT contact, and this guy who's head of maintenance. And we're all going to have a meeting, hopefully in the next few weeks, where I'll have all the paperwork filled out and we can have a decision done right then that we could go forward with the project. So I'm not gonna pussyfoot, and just leave a message for somebody or submit documents. We're gonna try to take the bull by the horns and actually get all the major players in the room and actually have a decision taken. So we'll see.
Let's see,
We'll try.
yeah. That would be fabulous. Okay, all right, let's move on. I think, actually, my territory is the Safety, Parking, and Transportation Committee. We have not met, so we don't have a report, but you've heard Sorrell's comment about the new bike plan, so I'll be looking into that, the new enhancement mobility plan. And I'll have something to report on that next time, I think. And then stadium oversight, did Scott?
Jerry sent me another report, so I'll have to channel Jerry again. It's okay for me to read this?
Okay, go ahead, yes, please.
The Stadium Oversight Committee voted in March to send the committee's recommended Good Neighbor Agreement and the city's comprehensive transportation management plan documents to the city council for hearing in April. That hearing was the day before our last board meeting. At that April hearing, a list of amendments was submitted to the city council by the Office of Fiscal Administration. Included were proposed amendments for public meeting notice provisions. You may remember that from our discussions last month. City council took that proposal along with a process amendment by NWDA to add language that GNA and the Stadium Oversight Committee should be subject to Oregon public meeting law. I circulated the resulting council document passed by council as soon as it was available last week. My expectation is that will take some time to figure out what it means because it applies a public process to the actions of a private entity. Clearly, the ethical issues and responsibilities of the Oversight Committee are and should be subject to the intents of the public meeting laws. I believe there will be some tailoring to do to get it to fit, and as the Oregon Attorney General's statement on the law makes clear, the process will be less nimble to respond to difficulty and event problems that it could have been. I'm not really sure where we are on that. I'm not sure what Jerry means. I know that we've proposed that the open meeting laws take place, and it looks like they're still pushing for it, but I'm not sure if they've accepted it. The CTMP as adopted falls short of what we wanted to see. Its language, in my opinion, is overly aspirational with too few metrics. There will be meetings sometime after the June 1st inaugural Timbers game, perhaps early July, in which both procedural issues and CTMP issues will be resolved. Peregrine is continuing to develop a monitoring plan for transportation parking and its capability to steer parking and rideshare traffic away from Goose Hollow. And that's the report.
Can I ask you something just under the report? I mean, there's so much there. What is the bottom line that you want me to put in the minutes for this?
See attached report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps.
It's wonderful. Why is it that when I'm the secretary, Jerry did not do
I do know.
Okay, so the last one is bylaws, and I don't think we have anything to report on that, do we?
He's on vacation.
Yeah, Roger's off in North Carolina, so. On that note, any final comments, questions, announcements? Anybody have any final things to add?
One thing, so the
Who are you,
architect.
who are you speaking as?
I'm speaking as Scott for once.
Okay, okay, Scott, you're acknowledged, not Jerry. Jerry, be quiet.
So the architect for Portland, for Lincoln High School, and the PPS representative want to present at next month's board meeting.
Okay.
So I'll get a lot more information from them on what they propose.
I have one other thing to add. I happened to run into at the Goose Hollow Inn, the individual who got a Northwest Examiner Award dealing with the train.
Yeah, that's a great
So I
project,
ran
yeah.
into him, I gave him my card, he might be getting in touch with Tracy. He would like to probably come also to the June meeting to talk about, how we can get active in that, or, sponsorship, or, donate and things along those lines.
Speaking for my kids and grandkids,
Well, that's
I'm
one
all
of the
over
things
that.
he brought up.
Yeah.
So, he'll either be getting in touch with me or with Tracy, so, just
Yeah,
wanna,
that would be great to support that.
Wonderful project.
Great. Seeing no further comments, the meeting is adjourned.
Wow,
Great,
great.
wow.
Before he-
On early.
More drinking time.